for having me here today. I'm very pleased. It's actually the first time I've spoken to a Georgian audience. I've been here since November, so but I am going to stay behind the lectern because I'm doing what I was told. But fear not, there will be some interaction, so I hope you still have a little bit of energy left. So I would like to start with a few famous people and have a quick look, and I'm going to ask you in a moment if you recognize any of them and if you can name them all. So have a look. But the question I want to ask you here is, this conference is about professional development, but that doesn't mean formal training and formal education. So let's be optimistic. Although at the PDP fair later you're going to see all about those training opportunities which have been brought in, it's an insight into the range of training available to you. But that's not the only way to develop the skills of where you want to be. If it's not available, have you asked for it? Mary was saying earlier, come and consult them. If there's not something that's not quite right for you, maybe they can build it into the program. And I really endorse that, really suggest that you do that, not only with organizations like the PDP, but with your own HR departments and with the Civil Service Bureau and any of those other institutions that you can engage with. And if it still doesn't exist, go to the dictionary definition of learning. Learning is not the same as training. Learning is experience, it is skills, and sometimes it's instruction. But a big part of learning is what happens within yourself, even when there is no instructor in front of you. And that's what I'm going to concentrate on here. Also consider Plan B. So for example, what do you do? What do you go browsing on Facebook and find yourself that suddenly an hour has passed and, wow, I was just looking at all this stuff about, I don't know, your hidden interests, the things which actually you would do even if they wouldn't pay you, if money was no problem. So my husband works in IT, but he really loves architecture, and he can spend hours and hours looking at modernist art and technical details of concrete. And really, if money was no object, he would look at buildings all day. So think about that, and think about how that drives you, and whether there are some skills that actually you would rather be following those. So back to the pictures. A lot of people weren't trained for the job that they eventually excelled in doing. So I'd like anybody who thinks that they know all of these people to raise their hand. Okay, somebody raise your hand. Who's the lady in the middle at the top? Okay. Who knows half of them? No. Okay, I'm going to tell you. The lady on the top left is Angela Merkel. The lady on the top right is Margaret Thatcher. They both are chemists by background, by training. In the top middle is a lady called Mary Anning, who was an English woman in the 1700s. Now, she was excluded from education at that time. Women couldn't go to university, but she spent all her time on the seashore in Dorset. There's a poem in English called She Sells Seashells on the Seashore, and that's about this woman. She made an incredible collection of fossils, and her collection and the detail which she drew them, and she provided those drawings to the scientific societies, really revolutionized the study of geology. So she's a very important woman. The guys on the left, the two guys are the Wright brothers. Along the bottom is Henry Ford, Albert Einstein, Faraday, Edison, and Steve Jobs. And they were basically all college dropouts. They gave up on their education. They left school or they left college. They said, this is not for me. I know what I'm doing. I have a passion to follow. And some of them were wealthy enough to carry that on without worries about money. And some of them lived in poverty for a while until they kind of made their name. And the woman on the right is Hedy Lamarr, an actress. But the symbols next to her are the frequency hopping system, which is what we use for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So she was an actress, but she basically was a physicist. So people are not necessarily, they have these hidden talents. And I'd like you to think about that and look into yourself and think whether you have those hidden talents that you could be exercising. Now I would like everyone, sorry this is going to break the video, but I'd like everyone to stand up. And to stay standing, if you have ever been involved in music or theatre or dance or sport in any capacity. And it's all of you. This tells me something. You have teamwork skills. You have them in more than the work context. Characteristics in music, dance, and sport are maybe skill and talent, but mostly practice. Definitely practice. Different parts of your brain are stimulated with physical movement. You make deductions, you make predictions, you analyze the behavior of other people. This is all happening at the same time. In music and theatre and dance, unless it's jazz, maybe, there are instructions. You're following some music. And you're trusting on the rest of the band or the choir and the cast to also do what you expect. You trust that they're following the instructions too. In sports, there's not so much of a detailed plan, but there are rules. And you'll do better if you know all of your team's skills. And they're following the rules, but you also know some of the skills which they're employing. And the tricks. And the better chance you'll have to turn the game to your advantage, yeah? But you don't know what the other side is doing. You think they're playing by the same rules, but unless you've made a really good study of them, you might not know what their particular skills are and that they're good at a particular move or that they have a strategy, okay? Some of you are going to sit down now because I'd like you to stay standing if you were on the committee, if you had a leadership role in your band, in your team sport. Were you the captain? Were you the lead violinist? Were you the person who made sure that there were drinks at half time? Or that there were ice packs on the sidelines? Did you have a role in helping the team deliver? And everybody can sit down now. Okay. But leadership and committee roles, especially when those are in competitive teams, what you're doing there is you're optimizing the resources which are putting in, like funding or skills or talent, with the output requirements, like a performance that people want to see, or a good scoreline that then attracts more funding. If you were one of these people, what you were doing was you were anticipating and using the things which make your team's output more likely to be good. If you didn't actually care what they needed or wanted or what their special skills were, your team probably sucked. It probably did badly. It may be the performance or the conference was a disaster. But the team here today have done a great job in running a conference, and people who run bands and sports teams often are really exercising well those skills. So I guess you don't elect your boss in your day job, but think about this: do you get what they need from you? Do you use the things which you thought of when you were running the band or the team? Do you help your current boss to deliver their outputs? And this was the question just in the past in the previous presentation. Even if your boss is not one of these real open and involving kind of people, you can influence them by subtle ways, by saying, "This will work. I will help you achieve your outputs." It's been a long day, and you're going to be tired tonight. Some days I'm so exhausted, it feels like it goes, and that's it, and we're switched off. But neuroscience tells us that sleep is really important for our brain, for our mental health and our physical health. Good sleep hygiene It means things like limiting alcohol and coffee or caffeine in the evening, which I find very difficult, and switching off blue light devices like mobile phones, TV, computer screens, because they have the blue light emitting makes your brain think it's still daylight, and it suppresses melatonin, which is the thing which helps you get to sleep. So that's a little of the science behind why sleep is very important. So I think what happens in your brain is more like this. That's what neuroscience tells us. It's not fully understood, but this Disney movie, Inside Out, was a genuinely brilliant attempt at processing what happens in your mind as you experience things. It builds up into these vignettes, these situations, and that helps how you then engage in the future, how you approach new situations. Some of these things will build up fears, which mean you're more likely to avoid situations, and some things will build up confidence. But what you do as you process your experiences through the day will help you turn any experience into a confidence builder rather than a fear. Some other research says that the brain literally cleans itself, and that sleep is important to avoid dementia and Alzheimer's and various illnesses in later life. So I'm going to go from neuroscience to psychology. We're all different. This is a whole different presentation on its own, really. But here are some ideas. It was very difficult for me to write these questions because it's kind of about me. I do like to receive praise and feedback. I like it personally. I like it to be positive. I take criticism very, very deeply. I'm very nosy about other people's work, so I think I'm in an excellent job here in Georgia because I can ask questions about all of the work, and I like to be helpful, be needed, and I like people coming to my ideas. Because I'm like that, it's difficult for me to write questions which are open, which says, do you like to be left alone? Do you consider yourself a details person? Because I'm really not. I like following a plan to a certain extent, but I also, if there are going to be changes to it, I like to be the one to make those changes. And this last point in there, the difference between stress and pressure, I think, is very important. And I could as well give an entirely separate presentation on the difference between stress and pressure and how to make sure that you work under one but not the other. But the thing I want to say here is you are allowed to be different. If I'm the boss and I have, I've heard this phrase goal-orientated amongst people here. If I had a team of 10 and they all describe themselves, yes, boss, I'm very goal-orientated, I'm terrified by this because I know that each of them wants to be the one bringing the solution. Each of them will want to be the one who presents to me and who wins the prize, in a sense. And if everyone wants to be that goal-achieving person in my team, then I'm worried about the quality and the detail of the work which they're going to do, because I think they might be in a race. They might be wanting to be the first to provide me with a good solution. I need a mixed team. I need some people who are quiet and who are doing a lot of analysis and detail. And I need some people who think a lot more slowly because they will process more deeply and they will come up with different ideas. As the manager of a team, I would like a range of personalities. So it's okay to be yourself, is my message there. Now I have one slide about teaching, about training. As I said, the vast majority of learning is about what happens in you, not what is taught. So this is a university that I actually went to. This is not the degree I did, but I'd like to just introduce what they teach on a bachelor degree in history. These are the compulsory modules. The comparison I want to give you here is what is broadcast or given to you as a student and what you end up with as a graduate. So some of the optional modules that are in addition to these will be things like more eras of history, some specializations like political discourse, political concepts, or maybe there'll be some feminist perspective, maybe there'll be history of science or technology, and they offer an option to take a language to a high standard and to do a year of study abroad. What they say on their website is that you will become an independent and self-motivated learner, and here are the ways that you will get your education, and here are the skills that are attractive to employers. And only one of those is content, a deep understanding of the past. That's the only one which they give to you. And actually, you have to work at it to really understand it. It's not that you can just repeat all of the facts. That's not the point. You will have a deep understanding. So this course graduates 125 people every year. If all those 125 graduates have got the same facts to give out and have got exactly the same understanding of the techniques, have got exactly the same abilities, then, as Sandra was saying, they're going to be in complete competition with each other. That's a very competitive environment, and so any employer can pay them very little because he knows there's one more person who's exactly the same right behind them. So that's not a good situation. What this course of graduates is expected to come out with, they've been in an environment where they've challenged each other to use the historical sources more creatively. The combination of the material that they've gained as facts and the techniques, and maybe mixing with people from a lot of different backgrounds, maybe having been overseas, met people from different cultures and different political experiences. Those students will be bringing new interpretations to any factual and archival material that they see. So they're unique. They have been through the same process, but they've come out as unique and high quality people. So how did I get here? So I'm going to take you back to that sports and music slide because I was thinking about this, about where I got here. So I was into a lot of orchestra. I was into a lot of music, but my God, I hated team sports. I absolutely hated it. And I think back now, I think why did I hate team sports so much? Well, in music, in classical music, we're following some instructions. So I liked, at that stage of my life, I liked to have instructions. I liked to know that everybody else was following the instructions, and that would be just fine. Team sports, I had no idea whether the person I passed the ball to was going to do what I thought they should do with it. Okay? So I didn't have that level of trust in teamwork. I liked planned teamwork at that stage. So that tells me something about that phase. I went to university, did a geology degree, and we did a lot of field work, and a lot of it was an English university, but a lot of our field work was in Scotland. And if anyone has been to Scotland, you'll know it rains, and then it rains some more, and then after that it will probably rain. All of this environment really puts you in a very sober mood. It's probably why Scotland drinks quite a lot. So I learned at that stage, I am not about the detail. I mentioned this earlier. I don't like doing detail, especially in the rain. I like big ideas. I like big mountains. I like to understand a large concept in a very abstract and strategic form. So I learned a little bit about myself at that phase. I did more field work. This was particularly bad. This was my first taste of failure. And I was 4 years into my fieldwork for my PhD, and we had a crisis in the UK where a lot of farm animals got sick. It was foot and mouth disease, and it meant that we could not you didn't have free movement across the land because of infection control. And this was a disaster for my fieldwork because I needed to go into rural sites. So I had to stop fit. I had to change the plan. I had to move to a very much more laboratory-based study. And then when that really didn't work, that redirection, I redirected it into actually the fundamental, the maths underlying this theory. And basically, everything went wrong. I ended up writing a thesis which was nothing to do with the original research question asked. And partly because of that, the examiners didn't like it, so I had to write it again. I wrote it 3 times, which for 50,000 words is a lot of writing. So this was, I often said at the time, I'm not getting a PhD in geology, I'm getting a PhD in damn well trying, and in trying again and again. A PhD in stubbornness, maybe. So, that was a really growth period in my life, but one of the other things which I did at this time was I was involved in some committees, some student representation committees, and I travelled around Europe working with a federation of postdoctoral and doctoral students who wanted a better recognition of working terms and conditions in universities. Now, that told me that actually I really liked speaking in committees and making change in the public sector. So now you start to see some signs of where I am today. I did a lot of more rain and snow and more physical work. I trained as an Army Reserve officer, and that was very emotional at times, but again, gave me an incredible insight into leading teams. This was a time when I knew I had to trust the team. So I said in team sports much earlier, very difficult to believe that my teammates would do what I thought they would with it. But the army team, a platoon, it does what you tell it to. There are rules, there are tactics, and they will follow it. And so I began to build a real trust in being able to work within a team. But I nearly failed again, but I didn't. So a very proud day and commissioning as an officer. Then in some work context, I wanted to describe this part. I was in a certain level of the UK Ministry of Defence where actually suddenly I was the expert, really. I had people at the level above me who they needed to make decisions, but I needed to provide the detail. I needed to provide a lot of evidence and a lot of really well-argued proposals for them that supported bigger decisions, really very important decisions in some cases, that they would then make that decision. And it really rested on my evidence and my policy skills and analysis. And at this point I thought, actually, it's my work, it's got my name on it, and it's somebody else getting to make this decision. So this was the start of a much more sort of motivated period. And the part where I really started to have ambitions for leadership roles. I had 2 children, and failure is no option with children, but also a really fascinating thing if anybody has young children, they are amazing to watch them, watching the way they learn, watching how they are not to try anything. You need to have a positive management style with them, because if you are telling them off all the time, they don't trust you, they don't come to you. So the experience of being a nice manager with my young children completely changed the way that I then engaged with teams around me. So if you have nephews or a niece, or if you have children of your own, maybe bring a little bit of that. I don't mean behave like a child to your boss, but maybe bring a little bit of that positive attitude that you take towards your children, well, I hope you do, into the workplace, because that really helped me at a time. And shortly after that, I took a job where I was the team leader, the manager of 7 project managers. And they were all very different people, so I'm glad that they had different skills to bring to it. But one of the things that I was very fascinated to hear in the previous presentation was about this confession time in meetings, because we did exactly that. And I'm pleased that it seems like a good idea to somebody else as well. But we did this, we had a series of questions. I kind of needed to structure this because some of my team were very shy. But we had I want to tell you about something I've done well and something that I've noticed you, my colleague, have done well this week, or I really liked the way that you ran that meeting, or something like this. So I had, it wasn't quite one confession to 9 compliments. It was difficult to reach that ratio. But it really made a better atmosphere amongst the team when people were encouraged to be nice to each other, basically. And then the last point, last year that I did this self-analysis, which is the background to this slide, and this has been the time when actually I've really started to realize that you look inside yourself for how you develop as a team member, as a team leader. So I want to ask some more questions to you now. Have you learned anything in the course of today? Yeah? Not just from me, from the whole series of presentations. So, is it in your notes or is it in your head? And if it's not written down, how are you going to recall it? It's going to fade away if it's only in your head. At least discuss it with your colleagues. And if not, write it down. I quite often use a little check sheet at the end of the day to capture what I've done in that day. And it says something like, what did I do well today? It's very much like the team meeting. What did I do well today? What have I left over for tomorrow? So that puts it right down. I don't need to worry about that overnight. What did I learn today? Maybe I met some new people, so I'll write a little note about them. I'll say, could be really useful when I pursue another piece of work, or I'd like to talk to them again about opportunities for a colleague. Did I learn something today that helps me understand my organization better and understand how to work with my colleagues? And then I'll write a note, what wasn't good today, and I'll do it differently next time. Why wasn't it good? So I think writing these notes down is important, because it's another way of cleaning out your mind. You don't need to have that sort of thing rumbling around and worrying you and being sort of not quite finished with. I'd really like to encourage you to reflect on what you're good at, what you're really good at, and what actually you think is a gap, a capability gap that you want to improve. This is for me is what professional development is about. If I'm not aiming for at least 1/3 or probably half of my time spent learning things myself or helping other people learn things, then I don't think I'm doing a good job. It's within yourself and it's as a team, and that's my final thought to you for today. Right. Thanks.